comfort food means different things to different people. Now, my comfort foods are things that generally have an Asian flavor to them. So I thought I'd put together a little collection of my favorite Asian comfort food dishes, starting with drunken chicken. I love the texture of this dish. It's so comforting and delicious. Then we have my 20-minute Vietnamese chicken pho, Speedy sweet corn and pork ramen, and finally, a surprising one that you might not have tried before, but I well recommend it. It's Cantonese steamed chicken with Cheong sausage.
It's that time of year again when Google releases its annual search trends. What were the most searched recipes in 2022? Well, I've partnered with Google to cook one of them for you. The annual search results are really interesting because you get to find out what foods or recipes people are actually interested in, what they've been typing in the privacy of their own home. And it turns out there's some really delicious and kind of interesting results, like how to cook tripe. I mean, I like tripe, but it's a little bit random. But there are some delicious ones like jaffles. Oh, I love jaffles. There is egg salad, fish tacos, salmon patty recipes. I like that. It's a bit old school this year, isn't it? Now, the one that really stood out to me though is drunken chicken. I've had this so many times in restaurants, but I've never actually made it at home. So let's make it. We need to start with the whole chicken here because I need both the chicken bones and the chicken pieces. There's a little bit of technique here, but I'm going to show you the easy way to do it. Start with the legs. Pull them apart, start cutting through, and just follow that muscle all the way down. Once you get to the joint, just cut through it, and there you have your chicken leg. Do the other side, and now the chicken breast. Slice down on one side of the breastbone and just keep cutting through along that breastplate until you reach that joint near the wing. Cut through the joint, and there you have it. You've got your chicken breast. Cut the wing off, and now you're really getting somewhere. Finish off the other chicken breast, cut that wing, and you have portioned your own chicken. So now we're gonna make the broth, and this is actually one of my favorite ways to make kind of like a cheats stock without compromising any flavor. I need the wings and the bones to make my stock first of all. Add in some aromatics. I want some ginger and some spring onion. And then here we go with the secret ingredient. It is chicken stock cubes. Okay, so chicken stock cubes combined with chicken bones and aromatics will make you one of the greatest chicken broths of all time, I promise. Top that up with some water and then just simmer for 20 minutes. And after that, you're gonna have the most amazing chicken broth ever. If you Google how to make the most amazing chicken stock ever, you won't find this recipe because I've been hoarding it. Use a spoon to kind of scrape off some of that kind of gunky stuff that gets on the top as you go along. Now here we are with your chicken broth. Remove those bones, and because we have this really beautiful broth, I can now take my chicken pieces and pop them in. And this is the part where it's a little tricky. So you don't want to overcook your chicken pieces. They should be beautifully juicy by the end and just cooked through. So I'm going to leave them gently simmering in here along with some goji berries. And then simmer for 10 minutes only. Turn the heat off and then let those pieces just slowly cook in the residual heat for another 20 minutes. So now we're finally at the drunken part. You can't have drunken chicken without the drunken part, obviously. So take your Chinese Shaoxing wine, and yes, this is the reason why this dish is called drunken chicken, because the chicken actually sits and marinates in that Shaoxing drunken sauce. Shaoxing wine plus sugar plus a little bit of salt, and then take a cupful of your warm broth and mix all of that in together. So by now our chicken has had that gentle rest in the poaching liquid, but we want to stop it cooking from any further and drying out. So put your chicken into a bowl of ice water and just let those pieces cool down. And now is the time for the big cleaver. To serve everything up here, you just want to slice your chicken pieces. If you don't have a big cleaver, you could actually just shred the chicken meat itself, and you'll see just how juicy and tender it is. Pop that into a serving dish and then pour over your Shaoxing wine sauce. And there you go. This is a dish that's often served cold. I kind of like mine room temperature-ish. Serve it with rice and some other banquet things, and you have a very delicious chicken dish. And I think for a boiled chicken dish, this actually looks really beautiful. And if you haven't tried it before, I would highly recommend it. The flavor is so like elegant and beautifully chickeny and comforting. Let me get in here and see. Okay, that chicken is like silky. It's so juicy and beautiful. This is like a severely underrated dish. So good. No wonder it's one of the most searched recipes of 2022.
So noodle soup, one of my great loves in life, and chicken pho, can't wait for you guys to try this one. Okay, so beef pho is the one that most of you guys would know about and probably have eaten, but there's also chicken pho. Don't leave the chicken pho out because actually it's way quicker to make at home and way easier. So that's what we're gonna do today. And to start off with, what we wanna do is create some aromatics, some nice roasted aromatics. I'm gonna start off with some onion, and I just wanna cut that in half. And that goes straight into the pan. I still want the skin on. I want to get some of that sort of charry flavor on this. So into a dry frying pan. And then I want the same thing with my ginger. I'm just going to cut that in half and get that straight into the pan, skin on as well. Now you just want to be turning these over every so often. I want them in here for a good 10 minutes at least. You've got to be a little patient here. I really want some nice dark color on my onion skin, and on the ginger as well. So I've got some cinnamon stick and some star anise that's going in. Just move that pan around, get everything nice and toasty. Okay, so the color is looking good on these, and this beautiful fragrant aroma in my kitchen now, which is so good. Now I'm gonna get these out onto a chopping board, and I just wanna peel off this first layer of onion skin. Doesn't matter if a little bit of skin sticks to the onion, I just don't want all of that skin on there. And now to help these aromatics release even more of their flavor, I'm just gonna slice them in half again to get some of those juices going out into our broth. Now chicken, I've got a whole chicken that just goes straight into a large pot. Okay, now you want enough water to cover the chicken and give you lots of nice soupy broth. And now the onion and the ginger and those lovely toasted spices. And now just a little bit of seasoning here at the beginning so that we can get some nice flavor infused into our chicken. We'll do a little bit more seasoning at the end. I'm gonna add some fish sauce. And then because I don't wanna color the stock too much or have too much of a strong fish sauce flavor, I'm also gonna season this with some salt, a good teaspoon. Now the secret here, guys, is that we don't want to overboil or rapidly boil this chicken. What we want is a nice gentle simmer, and that will give us the best chicken and the best broth for our finished dish. So after a few minutes, I can see that the water is just starting to barely bubble. That's the kind of simmer that we want. What you'll find is you'll get a little bit of kind of cloudy, scummy stuff that'll rise up to the surface. And at this point, you want to just take yourself a ladle and scoop that off as it rises to the top. And then I just keep like a bowl of water handy nearby just to clean off my spoon each time before I go back in there. And you can keep doing this as the chicken cooks, and that way you'll end up with a nice clear broth at the end. And now this is the kind of gentle simmer that I want to keep going for another hour. So I'm going to turn this down just a little bit and let that simmer away. Okay, so this is smelling amazing. I love the smell of the star anise and the ginger, and I'm just doing one final scoop of some of that stuff that's risen to the top, just to make sure we've got a really nice, clean, clear broth. Okay, time to get my chicken out, drain off as much of that soup as possible. And now I'm just gonna start slicing up this chicken. And look at all that glorious chicken. So this is the plus to cooking the broth the way we did. You could simmer the broth for hours and that would be great. You'd get more chicken flavor, but it would also mean that the chicken meat itself is kind of unusable because it gets quite tasteless. By just simmering it gently for an hour, we've got beautiful, tasty, moist chicken and a really nice chicken broth. Okay, now for the soup itself. I just want to strain that delicious broth. And look at that lovely colour. Now pour that stock back into a clean saucepan, and here's where we do our final seasoning adjustments. So let me taste the broth first and see what's going on. It's so delicious. You really get a beautiful, just fragrant whisper of that star anise, and I can taste all that chickeny goodness in there. So good. What we do need is a little more salt. Now, because we did just start with water, remember, you need to quite heavily season this broth to really bring out the flavors. And then I'm also going to add just a little bit of fish sauce as well. Oh yes, right on. That is tasting miraculous. So now let's get on with the rest of our noodle bowl. So I've just got some rolling boiling water, and I'm gonna add my rice stick noodles. Okay, these noodles are just cooked. Don't overcook them because that's when you get gluggy noodles. And I'm gonna drain those off, and time to assemble. So the noodles go in, and then I want some chicken. I like a mixture of white and dark meat. That's just my preference. Fine pieces of onion, just sort of spread those out. And a really decent handful of finely chopped spring onion. Time to get that steaming soup into our bowl. Ah, look at that, so satisfying. And there you go, a chicken noodle soup you'll be coming back to time and time again. Now let me show you how I like to eat this bowl. So I grab myself some bean shoots and then a really decent helping of Thai basil leaves. Pick those straight into there. And then a good squeeze of lime juice and a few little slices of chili. And then you've got to give everything a mix. That soup is so good. And those noodles. Perfect. Super easy miso ramen broth with a porky buttered corn topping. This is one ramen noodle bowl you need to know how to make. Okay, so traditional ramen broth, it's going to take a very long time. We are going to make a very quick shortcut version that you might want to make for a midweek meal or something where you want the ramen but you can't afford to wait. Okay, so we're gonna start off with a miso tare, and this is like a flavoring or a seasoning that we're gonna put into our chicken stock a little bit later. I wanna start off with a little bit of Marion. So that's a sweet Japanese cooking wine. I'm gonna add some ginger and some garlic. Now when I can see that Marion bubbling away, I'm gonna pull it off the heat. And now I'm going to dissolve in there my miso paste. So this guy can be a little tricky to dissolve. It kind of wants to clump up. So I find the easiest way is to put it into a ladle, a little bit of that hot liquid, and just move it around and dissolve it in the ladle, and tipping it out into the sauce as you go. Okay, so this is going to season our broth a little bit later on. Before we get to that part, I'm going to make all the toppings that we need. So the first one I want to make is a pork topping. So just want a little bit of oil. I'm going to add in some garlic. And then some pork mince. Now just spread that pork out and stir fry it until it's almost cooked. Now you want to add in some soy sauce. And I just like to let that simmer away until that soy sauce has been soaked up by all the pork and everything is like all salty and porky and there's not much liquid left in the pan. Okay, so you can see that most of that liquid is gone now. And trust me, that pork is really beautifully savory and salty, yum. So I'm just going to transfer that into a bowl. And I'm going to cook my corn in the same pan because, you know, it's the weeknight and I want to get things done quickly without too much washing up. So the next thing on our agenda is some buttery sweet corn. And for that, we need to start off with some butter, obviously. And some corn. I'm just using frozen corn kernels because I've always got them in the freezer. And cooking the corn in the same pan means it kind of picks up some of that porky juiciness from before. And you want a little bit of salt on there as well. Now just when that corn is heated through and all nice and buttery, then we can just take it off for later. So now we're ready to cook our noodles. All right, only one way to check out if these are ready. Just perfect. Now you just want to wrangle your noodles out of there. Straight into a large bowl. And now we just want to finish off the broth. So I've got some warm chicken stock here. I'm just using a packet one because we're taking shortcuts this time around. If you've got a homemade one, obviously use that. I'm going to pour in that miso mixture we made earlier. And let's just try this and see if we need any extra seasoning here. That is definitely a great way to doctor up a store-bought stock. That miso hides all manner of sins. We've got that beautiful ginger and garlic coming through and a little bit of sweetness from that mirin. Just great. So a generous helping of this over our noodles. And now we load this guy up with all our toppings. So some of that pork. And the sweet buttery corn. Some shredded cabbage just because I like the extra freshness and the crunch. And then I've got some very special soy sauce marinated eggs here. If you want to know how to make these guys, I've got a video on my YouTube channel on how to cook the perfect soy sauce or ramen egg. And just a little sprinkle of sesame seeds on top of that pork. So there you go guys, a little cheats version of some buttered corn and pork ramen noodle soup. Of course, I'll test it out for you guys because, got to make sure you're getting the goods. The butter and the corn and the pork, that is a killer combination. Salty pork kind of like permeates everything, and the butter too. So glad that ramen bowls seem to be so big. Never have a problem polishing off one of these.
Juicy chicken cooked in a really lovely, savoury, gingery sauce with a very kind of odd cooking technique. This is my version of Cantonese steamed chicken with Cheong sausage. So I know that like steaming chicken probably isn't the kind of thing that you would think of doing or would have done regularly, but can I please implore you to try out this technique because the steamed chicken is really soft and juicy and the sauce that you get, it's like, it just makes its own sauce. It's like self-saucing. Anyway, okay, let's get started on the chicken marinade first of all. So we've got some chicken thighs. Now I would highly recommend thighs here. I know that I have, like a moral kind of stance on legs and thighs, but I really do think here you get the juiciest chicken. So chicken thighs, boneless, and I'm going to flavour the chicken with some Shaoxing wine, some soy sauce, a little bit of sesame oil, and all of these flavours plus like the chicken juices all come out and make that amazing sauce during the cooking process. It's like magic. Okay, now I need some white pepper here too, and some corn flour. So interestingly, the corn flour itself is there for texture and also tenderizing. It seems to make the chicken a lot softer and kind of velvety, if you like, when it cooks. So there's always method to the madness. Mix that really well, set that aside. A couple of other things we need here. We need some ginger. Just give that a mix. Now, for those of you who don't have like a big, massive plate-sized steamer at home, it's no problem. You just need a little bit of like crafting here. I've just got some foil that I've sort of wound up into a little coil. I'm going to put in the bottom of my pan. Just any wide pan will do. And then turn the heat on. Add some water in, sort of about halfway up your little foil trivet. Pop a lid on. And then the plate will sit on top of that foil and steam when we put it in there a bit later on. But I'm just getting that water heating up to start with. Now a few more things here. I need some spring onion and some Chinese sausage. Now, if you have never experienced Chinese sausage, then you need to try it out. It's like sweet little pops of candied pork. It's really great. It's shelf stable actually, so in much the same way as like a cured meat or a salami, you can store it just in your pantry and it's available online. So do search it out. If you can't get a hold of the Chinese lap Cheong sausage, I would just leave it out. I think it's a nice added extra in this dish, but really the star of the show is that really lovely chicken and that really beautiful sauce. It's almost like this cooking technique kind of makes the chicken more chickeny. I don't even know how, but it makes it really delicious. You don't need the sausage if you can't find it. So to get all of this cooking, I need a plate which is smaller than my pan, and then I'm going to pop my chicken onto the plate. Make sure you get all of that marinade and the ginger on there, and then sprinkle over your Chinese sausage and the spring onion. And then my little makeshift steamer is steaming, which is good. Carefully place that plate into the steamer on top of the foil so it sits nicely, doesn't overbalance or anything. And then put the lid on. And this cooks surprisingly quickly. So I'm going to give that 12 minutes and it will be done. So much quicker than roast chicken. Chinese have got it really sorted out. So things are starting to smell very good in here. Let's have a look what's been happening. I love that. I think it looks really beautiful actually, and I can see that lovely sauce that's formed in the bottom of the plate. Ah, that just looks yum. Now this is kind of the tricky part. So the only downside to having like a makeshift steamer situation, get your tea towel and just lift out as best you can that hot plate, and be careful because it's hot. Finally, just a really generous sprinkle of some toasted sesame seeds. And there you go guys, steamed chicken with Chinese sausage and all those beautiful other aromatics we've added. I really think this is such a surprisingly simple as well, not just surprisingly delicious dish. So the way I would eat this is just to spoon out some of that chicken and the sausage onto some rice. Look at that sauce. I mean, didn't even have to do any work to make that. And then there you go. It's like one of those really lovely comforting kind of dishes, you know, chicken, rice, lovely sauce. It's like the biggest mouthful. So good though. So the chicken is beautifully soft and it just tastes really lovely and intense and yummy. And then like the pork, like the sweet pork just kind of pops in and goes, oh, yum. Well, the pork didn't talk, but I'm talking with my mouth full. Oh well. Yum. Really good. Yum, yum, yum.